Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Joy of Travel. Last month, I had the pleasure of interviewing Frederica from TFL Tours, and today I am welcoming another member of the TFL team, and that is Alessandra from Reco in Italy, joining me today. Hello, Alessandra, how are you?
Hi, buongiorno. Buongiorno, I'm
Buongiorno.
very good. How are you?
That's good, very good, thank you. So the last time when I chatted with Federica, we were talking about the fact that, COVID has had a real effect on the way people want to travel. And people nowadays really kind of want to get off the beaten path and they want to try something a little different. They want to get away from the crowds. So today you're telling me all about an area that a lot of people maybe have not heard of or have not considered. And that is Liguria, correct?
Correct. The region of Liguria. That's where I live and that's where I work as a tour guide. I'm working a lot with Federica. And some people sort of know the area, but sometimes they don't realize it's called the region of Liguria, while some other regions are more famous, like Tuscany or Sicily. But it's very well known. And it's an ideal place because it's very central. It's a very easy to be reached from the north, but it's very central, very close to a lot of places, very mild climate, even in the winter. Although we are in the north, the climate is sort of mild all year long. It's not that cold. It's like the French Côte d'Azur. We're very sheltered from the northern winds and we never get snow. So it's ideal because we have actually a much longer season than other areas of the north.
Exactly. Well, why don't you start? I know you've got a fantastic presentation for us with lots of information, lots of amazing visuals. So why don't we get a sense, show our viewers, as you say, where Liguria is, and we'll go from there.
All right, so I'm just going to show you in a second a map of Liguria, and that's so it's easy to understand where it is located. Is in the northwestern part of Italy. It's very close to the Alps, is very close to Milan, and so the lake area. It's super close to Tuscany, while the northern part of Tuscany is at the border with Liguria, but then Florence is only, for instance, 2.5 hours away. Lucca and Pisa are much closer. We have the ferries from here going to the island of Sardinia, very nice destination, and Corsica, and about 2.5 hours to the French Côte d'Azur, and so Nice airport, for instance, which is one of the biggest airports that we have in this part of Europe. So it's very central, close to everything.
Easily accessible.
Very easily accessible. We have 4 provinces in the region of Liguria. The central one is Genova, with the city of Genoa, which is the capital city and the biggest city in Liguria. And then this is the area all the way to the right or to the east, closer to Tuscany. That's the area of La Spezia. And this where I'm pointing at is the area of the Cinque Terre that everybody knows, of course. While the pink province of Imperia is the one very close to France, and that looks similar to the French coast, Côte d'Azur, because in this area, in the eastern part, the coasts are very steep, they're rocky, there are no large sandy beaches, and the landscape is very different because the mountains are much closer to the sea.
Right. Okay. Now, Liguria is, as we talked about how close it is to other places, you've sort of given us an idea of, let's say, a 3-day itinerary, a way to implement this as part of a bigger journey. So let's talk about what we're going to see.
There are a lot of options, but the sort of the basic 3 days itinerary, of course, starts from the city of Genoa, which is central, very easy to reach as an airport as well. And what you see in this picture is actually the old port area. It's the oldest part of the port of Genoa that has been used since the Roman times and the medieval times. But in the last 25 years, it has become a leisure area. You have a lot of things, mainly the aquarium, the City of Children, a couple of museums, restaurants, cafes. What you see down here in the winter is an ice skating rink, and in the summer,
Really?
we use it for, parties, music, and well, we used to use it, but now
We
not
will
anymore,
again.
but we will
again.
And also Genoa has the second biggest historic center in Italy after Rome. It's a huge pedestrian area with palaces, medieval palaces, Renaissance palaces, churches, towers, museums, and everything. And it's it's very nice because it's all a pedestrian area, and with a lot of things to see. I have taken a picture of the Cathedral of San Lorenzo, St. Lawrence, which also has a little bit the typical style that a lot of people think about when they think of Tuscany, this black and white stripes. That in fact here is marble and slate, not black marble as in Tuscany, because slate is the very common stone in our inland.
Oh, okay.
And so this is a beautiful church. And so one day in Genoa is ideal, of course, to take a guided tour around and walking around in the little streets and alleys and visiting nice places. And then having some free time in the center, because we do have a modern part of the city. This is the main square. It's called Piazza de Ferrari. It's on top of the hill. From the hill down to the sea is the old town. And on the other side, what you see in this picture, this is the new town, as we call it. We call new everything that was built after 1830.
It doesn't look new.
This is 1880, beginning of the 1900s,
exactly,
and we call it the new town. So we have the shops and everything else, whatever you want to find, and also, nice atmosphere because it's a relatively big city, but not very big.
Not super crowded.
So that will be the first day. While on the second day, we will move along the coast, the east coast, and we will sail along the so-called peninsula of Portofino, because Portofino is on a peninsula. But the part towards Genoa, and in fact, if you look at this very clear picture over here, see this bunch of buildings? This is the city of Genoa. So it's only about 40 minutes drive.
Exactly.
And Camogli, it's a beautiful place to visit. Very nice atmosphere, a nice promenade, a lot of cafes and restaurants, a very local place, a lot of tourists, but Italians basically. So you'll sometimes enjoy the fact of being sometimes with other tourists, but all from northern Italy. They come and spend a couple of days,
very
a week,
authentic
or their
feel.
Holidays.
Yeah,
very, yes. But
now, would there be any issues, Alessandra? Would there be any issues with language? Like if you only spoke English, are you going to be able to are you going to be able to order food and make yourself understood?
Yes. Definitely. Yes.
Good.
Definitely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then you go la da 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 da, and you'll be and
talk with your hands.
This and that. Yes, but it has a nice, relatively for our standards, beach and you can swim. The sea is very deep in this part of the coast.
Okay.
The buildings are very nice, as you see. They're all medieval buildings, restored through the times, but this idea of the towers with all these windows, and this is the main church, which has been rebuilt a few times, but you have a great view and what's left over here of the old walls. And then in the evening you see just the house, the buildings behind you are all the same, and you can enjoy an aperitivo by the water.
Right.
From Camogli, after a couple of hours, you can take a ferry or a private boat, and you go to San Fruttuoso. That's a small, tiny abbey, sort of in the middle of nowhere, right in the middle of the peninsula. It was built originally before the 10th century, but restored a little bit more recently in the 13th century. And then the monks left. It's so new. The monks left, and it's now a very nice place, interesting place to visit. There's a lot of museums. We visit the church. We take a swim. The water is beautiful there. But it's also a good chance to sail around the peninsula and see what's there, because that's a park. It's a regional park, and we will be coming this way along this final point of the peninsula and sailing here, where we find the village of Portofino, of course, one of the most famous places around. We can spend
all
time
the
in
rich and
Portofino.
famous.
Yes, see the VIPs, the yachts and everything else, but walk up to the fort, and that's where the picture was taken from, and visit a little bit before having a gelato in Portofino, which is very good. And of course, Portofino is very well known, doesn't need explanations. And then over to Santa Margherita. Once again, the last, sort of not the last, but one of the last towns on the peninsula, much bigger than Portofino, wide choice of restaurants and hotels eventually. You can rent a boat, you can go along because there's a train station, so you can take trains to more or less everywhere in the area. And so spend some time. The evening is plenty of restaurants and nice places where you can, stroll and
So
just relax.
it's actually a good place to base yourself then, I'm guessing, because as you say,
absolutely,
it's not as, chachi,
it's not a
as
city.
the word I like to use for Portofino, and you have a lot more options in the way of the cost of accommodations, that sort of thing, and lots of restaurants. So I mean, I know we're talking about a 3-day itinerary, but you could easily spend 3 or 4 days just parking yourself there and exploring.
And just having a half-day trip somewhere, and then just relax in the afternoon.
Exactly.
And the third and final day is the Cinque Terre, of course, that a lot of people know. This is a view of Manarola, and this is a view of Vernazza. They all look sort of similar with the exception of Monterosso. It has been, the area of the Cinque Terre, very crowded in the last, I would say, 10, 12 years.
Yes.
And so I don't know what is going to happen, but you always have to remember that it's a place where there are a lot of people in a very limited space.
Exactly.
And so that might be the problem in an area like the Cinque Terre. But once again, it's very easy once you get out of the tiny village and you don't want to just go back and forth and look at the stores, to go a little bit on the inland and do other things. But as I said, Cinque Terre are very popular right now. It means the 5 lands or the 5 villages. Right. And so it's definitely worth a day trip. But I wouldn't want to stay there because a lot of people enjoy just being in the Cinque Terre a little bit, hectic day, but then being able to go back to your hotel and relax in a quiet place.
Yes.
But still with life and everything, but a little bit
it's
quiet.
True, because often it's true. Like I know when I've dealt with clients myself, they have this idea that they want to actually stay in the villages themselves. And the reality is you can do a beautiful day tour, as we said, Santa Margherita, and you can do the 5 lands either by train or you can do it by a private boat, or don't they have ferries or something that kind of go from all of the villages as well, and you can go by water and walk up?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. You have ferries, you have trains. The only thing, there's no roads. So
right, exactly, no cars.
That's the only problem. So you can hike, you can take the train, you can take a ferry, and in season, and I mean from mid-July until mid-September, there are also ferries from Santa Margherita to the Cinque Terre for a day trip. If you don't want to get on the train, you just sit on a ferry. It'll be a much longer trip. It'll be like an hour and a half, but you can lay in the sun and just enjoy the view while you get there. And then
you get some amazing pictures.
2 or 3, yes.
Exactly.
Because the view is beautiful. And when you get closer to Cinque Terre, the ferry will just go along the coast. So you have a great view. That's also a possibility.
Okay, good to know.
Another possibility, as we're speaking of the Cinque Terre, is to hike. As you can see from this other map of Liguria, for the very active people, Liguria offers an incredible choice of hikes. As you can see from this map, 95% of the territory of Liguria is mountains. The part over towards France, that is on this side to the west, are what we call the Maritime Alps. And they are very high mountains, up to over 2,000 meters. And then all this part over here are the Apennines, which are also high mountains, not about the maximum is like 1700, but it's still very high. So there is what we call the high route of the Ligurian mountains, which is a very long 440 kilometers, but it's divided already into 10 kilometers sections, and people can choose which section they want to do, and they can do 5 or 6 days. That's a little bit more, it's a little bit harder because it's up high, you never get down, while a lot easier is the peninsula of Portofino that we mentioned before. It's basically a square peninsula sticking out of the coastline, and what you see, the red, you see Camogli up here where we're going. We did this basically by ferry, but whoops, but on this so I need to go back.
No problem. There we go.
And everything that you see underneath this red line, these are footpaths just for hikers. There's no road. That's the only road that cuts up there, the peninsula. Everything else is over 70 kilometers of different footpaths. You can go from 2 to 5 hours at the most. But what's very convenient is that you can, for instance, walk from Camogli to the Abbey of San Fruttuoso that we mentioned before, and then take the ferry back. So you don't have to do it 2 ways, and especially uphill. And so that's very nice. Or you can go to San Fruttuoso and then take the ferry on to Portofino. And then at that point, visit Portofino, spend some time there, and then take a bus or another ferry to go back to Santa Margherita and to the train station to go to where you're coming from.
Right. Okay.
So what we have to remember is, although Liguria is by the sea, we have a lot of places that are really mountains. It's not that easy. So, but you can have people taking you up on top of there, like a driver, or sometimes by bus, and you can sort of walk flat like this lady's doing. So it's not that hard. Or you can choose to do the whole thing, but this is what the landscape and the view would look like most of the times.
So yeah,
no
you're basically you're cautioning, you're cautioning people as to this is most definitely moderate to extreme hiking. This is not meant for anybody with any kind of walking disabilities or wheelchairs or anything like that. This is not the area for them.
No. Well, you can do the basic, but especially in Cinque Terre. In Genoa, you can do a lot more, but still, Genoa, as I said before, is a big pedestrian area. So we need to be aware that there will be always a little walk involved, because you can't really drive until, some
exactly.
But you can walk among the vineyards, the terraced vineyards, enjoy the view of the villages from the top, and that will be a great experience. So there will be a little walking involved in most cases, but there is really a wide choice from an hour and a half to 5 to 6 hours of hiking. And in between, there are a lot of chances. So people can have, the more active one can have like half a day of hiking, maybe 2-3 hours, and then a relaxing afternoon once again, in there on the beach or in the hotel. And so that'll be really nice. But it's really a place that offers a lot of possibilities. Not as many for bicycles.
No,
you have to be really good.
I know.
You have to be really good for that.
Yeah, extreme.
Speaking of vineyards, the typical wine of Cinque Terre is called Chaquetra. And it's it's cultivated in this very difficult territory. Sometimes in Cinque Terre, we do visit the vineyards and we learn how they deal with this very hard territory. It's very interesting because you have like a railway to go up and down, like a little train that goes up for people to go in their lands. And so we learn how this works and how through the centuries, men have fought with this very hard territory, and now they're going
against nature.
Absolutely. Here is very hard. But also the pesto sauce, speaking of food, is the king of Liguria. As you know, pesto is typical of here. It's made of basil, cheese, garlic, pine nuts, and of course the extra virgin olive oil. So another very nice activity that we do sometimes when we are in the area is learn how to make pesto. And of course, no mixer or blender, you need to do it with a mortar.
Mortar, yes.
Because it doesn't have to be creamy. You still have to have the chunks of everything. So
That's
if
right.
you sort of use a mixer, it won't be the same thing. But we have very fun times making pesto and also cooking classes. And we go around with Guido, who's the guy that you see up here. And we learn sometimes how to make panzotti, which is a kind of a ravioli, but with just vegetables and cheese inside. They're differently folded, but the idea is tough pasta anyway, that we eat with the walnut sauce. So that's another specialty in the area.
Very different.
We also, yes, it's typical with the panzotti. This, what you see the lady here is making, that we visit oil mills. So we learn how to, we make extra virgin olive oil with the special olives from the region of Liguria. And sometimes we also have the possibility to learn about the different olive oils, extra virgin olive oils in the different regions, so that we learn better how to use the right olive oil with the right food.
Yes, exactly.
Because in Italy, we're very specific about what kind of olive oil we should
You guys,
use.
you are. It's like I said, it's a religion to the Italians.
Absolutely.
As to what it is. I think the other thing the viewers need to understand as well too is that although Italy, like in relation to Canada, is a small country, you have such specific cultural cuisines in each of the regions. The sauces change, the flavors change. And when you and I were chatting, yeah, like when you and I were chatting earlier this week, you mentioned to me that Liguria, which is funny because you would assume it would be all seafood, that actually wasn't the case in that particular area.
No, in fact, a lot of people are surprised because what we have in Liguria, the basic, Ligurian cuisine is basically a vegetarian one, because in the past they didn't have space for animals. So no butter, no milk, no pigs. They had the herbs in the garden, goat cheese. So a lot of what we call torte, which sounds like a pie or a quiche. It's vegetable stuff with eggs, maybe with goat cheese originally, olive oil, like our bread, which is down here, is with olives, and it's focaccia bread. It's a salty bread with olive oil. In the past, it was a hard bread, hard salty bread that the sailors will take on their boats, and then they will put the olive oil on top to make it a little bit softer.
Soften it out.
Now it's a freshly baked, so sometimes we just walk into the bakeries and have a piece of focaccia, which for us is a morning food. It's a breakfast, or it's a mid-morning snack. Yes, and so every region has its own specialties. Even the shape of the pasta here is called the trofie, and you only find it here. So very, very different. Even if we're very close, for instance, to Tuscany, where meat is all they eat, but here meat is very seldom. And then in the last century, of course, with tourists coming in this area, a lot of people come to eat fish, of course. But, in the past, it was mainly for the holidays or the special days, but people who were living in a steep coast, like the Cinque Terre, they wouldn't have any way to get to the sea unless they jumped.
Yeah.
But then they didn't know how to get back.
Okay. Well, we are running out of time here, it's telling me. So are we just about done with this presentation?
Yes, I just wanted to mention just a few things that we were talking about, the off the beaten path places, and Liguria is all off the beaten path, because in Genoa, this is an area of Genoa very close to the center, very nice. It looks like Portofino a little bit. All of the Ducale Palace, one of the nicest museums. You never have to stand in line. There's never crowds. The cathedral is never that crowded. So forget the Florence, Rome lines. Here, the city itself and the region itself, with the exception of very few places like Cinque Terre and maybe Portofino, but just on peak days, everything, palaces you can visit them. Sometimes they're museums. Sometimes it's just show you how nice it was and how the furniture and everything else. there's hardly anyone there. You can take a sort of a tram or a little train that takes you up to the walls that surrounded in the 1600s the city. And once again, you know, very easy to be not on your own, but with very few people around.
Exactly.
And the whole region is like this, the city
Which
of
is
Genoa
wonderful.
and most part of the coast. Of
Exactly.
course, not a Sunday in August with 40 degrees when everybody is at the
No,
beach trying to find
no,
a place to swim. But, you know,
exactly.
most of the seasons, that's what it is.
Well, this is why, again, I love dealing with TFL, because you guys know your regions so incredibly well. And you really make my clients feel so at home in your home. It's a perfect way of being able to regionalize each of the experiences themselves. TFL uses tour guides that only do specific areas. Alessandra
Absolutely.
is the expert on
The queen.
Liguria. Exactly, you know, and so it's an amazing way of being able to do Italy the right way. So I just want to finish
There's
off
no pre-prepared tours. Everybody just tells us what they want, what they feel like doing, and we just tell them what's best in our opinion.
Exactly.
But it's always through you. It's always a way to understand really what the client would like to
What
do.
the client
And,
desires, what the client wants. I agree 100%.
absolutely. And the logistics is very, might be a little bit complicated because you have all of this means of transportation, cars,
Yeah,
trains, ferries, boat. And so being with us is not only the pleasure of knowing, for instance, in the city of Genoa, you know, the history and the art,
right.
but also not wasting time trying to find your way around is very important,
Absolutely.
especially if you're thinking of spending a limited time there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Alessandra. You are a wealth of
Thank
information.
you.
And
Thank you
you
very
take
much.
care. I understand Italy's opening up, so things are looking better for you. So let's
It
hope
is
for a
getting better.
wonderful, yeah, let's hope for a wonderful fall, and 2022 we'll all be back to traveling again. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to the viewers.
Thank
We will
you.
be back again
Grazie
next
mille.
week. Yeah, we'll be back again next week to talk about a whole new destination. It's all about traveling safe, and it's all about being out in the world again. Talk to you again next week. Bye-bye, everyone.